Hey everybody, welcome back to another Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Dayton and Paul as usual. This time is more of a season preview to follow suit with the rest of the teams in the league. And obviously today we're going to be talking about the Senators. Did not have a good season last year, bit of a failure yet again. What's that? 8 seasons, 7 seasons without the playoffs. It's unacceptable at this point. You look at the core of Brady Tkachuk and Claude Giroux and those guys that are really the leaders. You you wonder how long they're going to stick around on a losing team. Claude Giroux's a UFA after this season. Brady Tkachuk, obviously, there's been rumors. He says he wants to stay, but winning speaks volumes. So we're going to get into what we kind of are looking forward to for the 2024-25 season. And we've got quite a bit to talk about. So we're just going to get right into things. So talking about the new forwards, Ottawa has a handful of new forwards. First, I'll ask you about David Perron. Paul, what are your thoughts on the addition of David Perron?
Nice addition. He has pedigree. He's got Stanley Cup winning DNA. Question this year will be, can he translate that or uh, insert that DNA into the team? Can he leave it behind? Will the youngsters follow him?
Yeah, Dayton, what are your expectations for Perron's on ice play?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. Like I think it could go one of two ways. It could either go Claude Giroux-esque, and all of a sudden he breaks out and has one of his best seasons ever, becomes like that 60-point guy again that he has been in his career. Or he looks like a 36-year-old on a very young team. And, his speed has been brought into question. He apparently took a lot of kind of clutching and grabbing penalties back in Detroit because he just couldn't keep up. I think I think it will have more of an impact like Giroux. I don't know if he quite hits like career highs, but this is a really good core that can, I think, really help him to show off his offensive flair that maybe he didn't get to show off as much in Detroit.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic signing. I mean, whether you're going to put Josh Norris or David Perron at the second line left wing, either one's a really good option. So, um, moving on to the next forward, Noah Gregor. I guess he was the first forward that was signed, kind of bottom of the importance level for expectations on the roster. But what do you think of the signing, Dayton?
I think it's good. He's really, really fast and he plays with high energy, which is great. That's exactly what you want on your bottom six, which is where he will be. He probably won't do as much as he did at Toronto last year, which was only 12 points and 6 goals. Um, I'm thinking like maybe 10 points. He's not going to get a ton of ice time, but he's got the speed, he's got the energy. I think he'll work really well with what they have already established on their team.
All right, and Paul, I'll ask you about Michael Amadio. What are your thoughts on bringing him in?
Well, again, another Stanley Cup winner. I think it was with Vegas, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, the year before. And what I like about the additions that is now every line, all four lines, have got a veteran playing with them, and three of those four have they've seen how a Stanley Cup is won. So you can't go wrong with that. Amadio, yeah, good solid journeyman. He'll step up and contribute.
good. And I think one thing I heard, and I don't remember where I heard it, but somebody pointed out that he's one of those guys that when your star players aren't playing, that's when he has his best games. So like when Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk are having an off night, that's when you're gonna notice Michael Amadio even more. So that's a really good addition. And Paul, I guess you mentioned three Stanley Cup champions being added. Dayton, they added Nick Cousins to play on the fourth line. Give me your thoughts on that.
Um, we've talked a lot about the Cousins signing. I think it's fantastic. He's not going to put up a ton of points like Gregor, um, but he is going to just annoy every other team they play against. They're going to be a tough team to play against. He's going to work really well with guys like Brady Tkachuk, who already make, other teams regret coming to Ottawa because it's just annoying. It's, he's not a fun player to play against. Ridley Gregg is developing into that kind of guy. And now you have a veteran who knows, like, he's been the most hated guy in the NHL for a couple of seasons, I think. And it works. It worked very well in Florida, and I think it'll work just as well in Ottawa. They're a little bit further behind the Panthers in a rebuild, obviously.
Little bit.
But no, I think they're very similarly built teams, and I could see Ottawa becoming like the Panthers in 5 years, but I think he turns them into a potential playoff contender this year.
Fair enough. A couple other forward additions that the team made. Xavier Bourgault, Yan Yannick, and Nikolai Kulemin, which we haven't gotten a chance to talk about, but that's just insane. So yeah. Paul, are there any of those three that you want to touch on real quick?
No.
No, Dayton?
I mean, Kulemin is on a PTO, so I don't see him making the roster. He's 38 years old and hasn't scored more than, what is it, like 15 goals in a decade in any league. It's for the feels. It's for the fun. He'll score a goal in preseason. Everyone will be like, this is great. And then he'll go and retire. It's very reminiscent of the Theoren Fleury situation a couple of seasons ago, just not with the team that he kind of became famous with.
Yeah, that one you call that one a publicity stunt, but to one end. I mean,
I don't know. A lot of people are talking about it. It seems to be very public, and people are paying attention to the point that they were not looking at the other guy who is going to potentially make the team. I think I'd bet on that.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say is I'd rather have Nikolai Kulemin as a locker room leader than Travis Hamonic. Just saying. All right. The only two forwards that Ottawa moved on from via trades, Matthew Joseph and Igor Sokolov. Matthew Joseph put in good effort in the bottom six. I think his presence will be missed, although Michael Amadio kind of replaces him almost identically, just with less speed and more skill, I guess. And then a couple of players that went away. I guess Mark Kastelik, he was traded as well. Few players left in free agency. That was Parker Kelly, and that might be it. I don't know. But anyway, so the forwards are looking pretty good. Like you mentioned, Paul, there's a veteran on every line. There's kind of a feisty player on every line. Ottawa's taking good shape. What are your general thoughts on the whole forward group, Paul?
Well, what I like about it is Staios is it cleaned the barn out, so to speak. So you got rid of players that, frankly, just didn't want to be here. And I'm mentioning there Tarasenko didn't really want to be here. Kubalik didn't look like he wanted to be here the way he played. He solidified the roster. All the guys that he's got on the roster appear to want to be here. They're committed. And it was he's had a good summer.
Great. Dayton, what are your thoughts on the whole forward group?
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. I don't know if you could have done much better with what the Senators had to work with. And I think it's very much a step in the right direction, especially if you're building a team that is going to be very tough and very, like, we're not talking, 80s, 90s tough, but we are, like, for the modern NHL, it's a very, gritty, very, in your face team that also has a lot of skill. And I think this summer really consolidated that. And we've talked about that in previous episodes, where this team now has an identity. And I think this summer finally gave the team its identity. And this is what they are. And they'll be building towards that based on the moves that they've made for this season.
So the only caution I'd throw out there, and I know, there's a lot of hype in town about the wonderful offensive power that the Senators have. But if you look at the top six, there's no one in that top six that's top tier in the NHL. even Tkachuk, Stützle, they're well down there. You don't have anybody in the top 10. I'd have to look again. I don't think you've got anyone that cracked the top 20 in points. And then the bottom six, and because you need a bottom six to score, they're improved, but the question is, are they improved enough? So I'm just kind of questioning the hype. As good as Tkachuk may be, and as exciting as Stützle is, they're kids. They haven't proven themselves, and they're certainly not top tier. Potentially, maybe, but
I think 90 points from Stützle and 37 goals from Brady Tkachuk is pretty proven. I don't think a team needs a top 10 player in the league. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk, I think recency bias is why he's top 10 in the league, and just his, like, yeah, most people include him in the top 10, but him and Barkov probably on the outside, if you're just looking at like the last 3 years, probably like 11 and 12, like very close. And then you look at Vegas. Vegas doesn't have any top 10 players. The top 10 is mostly Edmonton, Colorado. I don't think you need a top 10 player. I just think you need your stars to perform, be the top 20, 25, which Brady Tkachuk and Tim Stützle can both be, and just make everything work. And that's been Ottawa's biggest problem. They haven't gotten everything to click.
We're going to see.
But we'll see. Moving on to the defense. Quite a new look going on here. Obviously, Ottawa traded Jacob Chychrun for Nick Jensen. They are expecting to have Tyler Kleven on the NHL lineup. They just made a whole bunch of moves, and they brought in a PTO. But let's just start at the top. Nick Jensen. Dayton, what are your thoughts on bringing him in?
I think it's easy to look at the trade on paper and see it as a losing trade because Nick Jensen is not as offensively dominant as Jacob Chychrun. Jacob Chychrun is a very skilled guy at carrying the puck and moving the puck and putting it in the net. Nick Jensen is not. But I think he fits the team a lot better. I think he will be a fantastic pairing on like the second line or the second, defensive pairing. He provides more stability than Chychrun. Chychrun was a little bit all over the place. And I know I'm supposed to be just talking about Jensen, but for me, it's hard to think of one without the other. So he brings a lot of really good defense, and he has for a long time. He's been really consistent in his tenure in the NHL. And he was even doing so on a weaker Capitals team that, I mean, maybe not as weak as the Senators, but I can't remember if they made the playoffs, or if they did, they barely, went in.
Yeah, they just squeaked in with a minus 37 goal differential.
Yeah. Okay. So it wasn't an impressive entry, and they were out in the first round.
Yeah, they were swept.
Exactly. I think you put somebody like that, like Nick Jensen, on a team like the Senators, where he has, more guys to partner with, more guys to pair, and it's a really good move.
Yeah, I think he's going to bring really good stability that Ottawa needs on that right side. I agree. Paul, I mean, I guess we can touch on Tyler Kleven just because he's expected to make the roster. What are your thoughts on bringing Kleven in?
So 2 points on defense. Jensen, don't know him well. The burning question is, what does he do for Shabbat? So he's a right shot, stay-at-home defenseman. And the theory is he's going to open up a world of opportunities for Shabbat. You're going to see this offensive power skill from Shabbat that we probably haven't seen in Ottawa. So I'll be looking at that. Kleven, yep, I think he's going to make the roster. Question for me is, who's the other guy on the third pairing? That's a big question mark.
Yeah, that's a huge question mark. Right now, it's on the right side, at least, it's going to be either Travis Hamonic, Jacob Bernard-Docker, or they did just give a PTO out to Kalen Addison. What are your thoughts on that date? I know you were kind of a little antsy to talk about that.
It's true. I think it's really smart. He is okay. It's really easy to look at him and think this is just Eric Brandstrom again. because they had very similar stats last season, and they do play very similar styles. However, digging into it, Calen Addison provides a more well-rounded game. They turned Erik Brannstrom into a shot blocker. That's what he was, and he was good at it, but they essentially removed his puck-carrying abilities. He wasn't the guy that they brought in anymore. He was a bottom-pairing defenseman. Calen Addison also has the same speed, also, blocks a decent amount of shots, not as many as Brannstrom, but then he also had a very, maybe not in San Jose, but previously he had a very good puck possession game, and he can play on the power play and he can move the puck. There are, of course, defensive consistency issues, but I think if you pair him with a guy like Tyler Kleven, that would work really well. You have somebody who's very big and powerful and defensive, but also can move the puck a little bit. And you get somebody with speed like Addison on there. Yeah, I think he could very much make the roster. He's a better player right now than Bernard Docker and Hamonic. So yeah, sign him to a cheap deal. That's what he's there for. I think he'd take a 1 year and then prove himself. And I think he could. The Senators, I think, would be a fantastic fit for him to earn a new contract, probably somewhere else, but maybe stick around in Ottawa for a while.
Yeah, very well could be. One thing I look at with Addison, if they do give Calen Addison a contract, they're going to have to waive Jacob Bernard Docker. I know people weren't super thrilled with his development and how he played last year. He was a solid third pair defenseman. I will stick by that, especially alongside Tyler Kleven. I think that he could do pretty well this season. So signing Calen Addison means waiving Jacob Bernard Docker or waiving Addison, if that makes sense.
Let me see if I recall correctly. They waived him. He didn't get picked up, right?
He did not. But last year he had the best year of his career so far. So I expect that he would get claimed this year, which isn't the end of the world. But yeah.
Yeah, I like Bernard Docker, but I don't see him becoming the guy that they drafted. I think his development has kind of plateaued a little bit. He did hit career highs last season, but they'd been trying to give him opportunities for years. And he finally emerged as a decent but not fantastic defensive defenseman with Ottawa. He didn't have the greatest advanced stats for being a defensive defenseman. There was stuff that he should have been better at if that was his role. And comparing him to Addison, he falls short, at least based on their last season stats, even taking into account that Addison played on just the worst San Jose Sharks team. That really tanked his numbers, and he still looked slightly better than Bernard Docker. So they're the same age, by the way. They're both 24.
Hey, so remind me, where are we in relation to the salary cap? What's he gonna cost?
He's probably 800K, 900K. And Ottawa has about 1.1 million with Kleven, Bernard Docker, and Hamonic on the roster.
Doesn't get tighter than that.
No.
Yeah.
I think there would have to be another move. Or, again, you're going to have to waive somebody to make up the space. So I think it'll work out if they give him a contract.
At this point, I think, I don't love it, but I'm okay at losing Bernard Docker for nothing, because I think that's about what he's worth at the moment.
I think there's no way that he goes past Edmonton. I think Edmonton that's the 31st waiver claim, so whatever. But I think Edmonton would be the first team to be like, yes, I want him. Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, I just don't think he makes it through. But moving on to goaltenders, just for the sake of time, I'd love to talk about Jacob Bernard Docker for 40 minutes here, but Linus Ullmark, is he finally going to be the solution that Ottawa has needed since Craig Anderson left? He had a fantastic year in Boston last year, even better the year before with a .938 save percentage and a Vezina trophy. He can't get much worse of a bet than that, or much better than a bet than that. Do you think that he is the solution at Dayton? I know that you've talked about how the goaltender isn't the problem, but do you think he's part of the solution?
Well, he's definitely the best guy they've added since Anderson left. He actually has, last season was a good season, right? It wasn't his, like, he didn't win the Vezina last season, but he did just the year before, and he didn't dip all that much following, that. Of course, there was a dip, but that's, neither here nor there right now. So easily the best guy. Matt Murray was coming off of, I think 3 seasons of regression. Cam Talbot was consistent, but didn't, like, he benefited from a couple of really good defensive systems. And then Jonas Korpisalo was, that was a risk that they took from a couple of good games, and it failed. Those were all riskier ads on less talented goalies. Linus Ullmark has proven that he is one of the, top 20 goalies. I think is putting it pretty generously.
Top 10, I would say, easily.
Yeah. I could be a little bit more aggressive with that, but easily like top 20, which the Senators haven't had since Anderson. So I think it's a massive upgrade, and he's channeling Patrick Lalime with his new mask. Check out my new article if you haven't.
That was a good one. I like that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, taking a look at the history of the masks in Ottawa. There's been so many good ones. It's very much a side note, but I completely forgot about Darth Gerber.
Yes.
Straight up wore Darth Vader's helmet on his mask. That was great.
Was so great.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah. Ullmark, good.
Perfect. And Paul, what about Anton Forsberg as the backup? Are you still happy to see him stick around?
Yeah, I don't think you have any choice there. I don't think Sogard is ready for prime time. Anything I've seen of him. So Forsberg, yeah, what choice do you have? Ullmark, yeah, sure. Great addition. I mean, he's not stellar. If you look at his stats, he's solid. Don't get me wrong. He's his lifetime numbers are, I think, .918 save percentage, 2.51 goals against, and that puts him on par with the other goaltenders in the division, the likes of Bobrovsky and Swayman and Wall. So yeah, nice solid addition. My only issue is, can you keep him? Because he's on a 1-year contract. If things don't work out, he's gone at the trade deadline, and he has to be. He's going to insist on it, and the Senators have got to get something for him, and that could put a major hole in the canoe come playoff time, and the rush to the drive to make the playoffs. So something to think about.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty happy with the tandem. And Sogard is your third goalie. I think that's great. And Michael Simpson, interested to see how that goes. See if he proves to be anything. But moving on to the bench boss, Ottawa hires Travis Green as their next head coach. Bit of an up and down career for him. He's getting another chance here, signed a 4-year contract. So he's either sticking around for a while or Michael Andlauer's paying him for a while. What are your thoughts on the hiring? What are your expectations? Do you think that he is the right kind of coach? Do you think he is the right coach? We'll start with you on that, Paul.
Well, he's talking a good line. He says, pronounces himself a tough, demanding coach, which is what the Senators need. The question is, can he develop an identity? Ottawa hasn't had one. And, can he instill a winning culture in Ottawa? From what I've seen in the last few years, the team they celebrate moral victories instead of genuine triumphs. And, you've got to wonder, with that kind of culture, if he can't turn it around, what's the impact going to be on your kids? Guys like, Jacob, you've mentioned it a number of times. How long is Tkachuk going to stick around? The guy's been in town, if I got it right, 6-7 years.
This will be his 7th season. No, 6th.
Yeah, Shabbat's been there 7, and neither one of these guys has had not a whiff of playoff action. So, he's got to turn that around, turn the culture around.
Dayton?
Yeah. he's a much better defensive coach than DJ Smith. He's had some criticisms for being kind of uncreative and, you know, maybe not the right fit for, at least for what the Canucks needed, which is, I think, that was his first NHL shot, and it didn't go great. But one thing that keeps popping up is personal accountability. And I think that's something that the Senators haven't had. DJ Smith hasn't really, or didn't really, it seemed like he didn't hold players accountable. He had his favorites and they would play regardless. So you could do kind of whatever you wanted. And it resulted in a very disorganized team that could not perform when it counted. I think Travis Green will change that. He has a track record of being, a tough but fair coach. He will improve the defense. I would assume he's not going to play Thomas Chabot his ridiculous, 30 minutes a night, which is always a good sign because that's killing him. Probably more literally than we think. There's a lot of injuries. Yeah. I think it's going to be incredibly detrimental to his health. But yeah, Green is a good developmental coach. He's been much more successful in the minors, but I think Ottawa could use somebody like him, and 4 years is a long commitment. We'll see how that goes, but at least for a little bit, he's exactly, in my opinion, what the Senators need.
All right. So moving to the entire Atlantic Division, where does Ottawa finish? Where are they going to end up, Dayton?
First.
First. I love the optimism.
Yeah, that's all it is, though. Man, let me refresh me. Who's all in the Atlantic again?
So I think it's fair to say that we can all agree that Boston, Toronto, and Florida are going to be top three. I think that's fair. So I'll ask you both just in order. Is Ottawa better than Tampa Bay right now? No. Is Ottawa better than Detroit?
Yes.
Okay. Is Ottawa better than Buffalo, Paul?
Yes.
Dayton?
Yeah, I think it's close, but they're better right now.
And is Ottawa better than Montreal?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I think so. I will say, I think Montreal is going to be a whole lot better than people expect this year. My bold take, and this isn't the place for it, but my bold take is that they don't finish 8th in the division. I don't know who's going to finish 8th, but it's not going to be Montreal. All right. So you think Ottawa is going to finish 5th by my count. So you have Boston, Tampa, Florida, and Toronto ahead of them. And then they're better than the rest.
Yeah. I think here's a little bit of maybe a bolder take. I think they go kind of down to the wire with the Lightning. The Lightning have regressed, and they've traded away a couple of pieces that, at least it surprised me. I don't know why you'd move on from Mikhail Sergachev other than you have to because of money, but that hasn't really stopped the Lightning before. And also the Steven Stamkos thing, super weird. I think they're going to take a step back, and I think Ottawa's going to take a step forward. Maybe that is the fight for the last playoff spot.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we're going to move on to some quick fire questions. Might not be so quick, but that's what we're going to call them. So first question I have for you, what is the biggest storyline or question mark headed into this season? Start with you on this, Paul.
Linus Ullmark, can he live up to his Vezina Trophy pedigree?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty consensus one there. Dayton, do you have a different pick, or is that where you sit too?
I think that's a good one. I think maybe the biggest storyline is, can they end their playoff drought?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest one to follow throughout the year. For me, it's how big of a step does Shane Pinto take? Because especially with the questions around Josh Norris, Shane Pinto, if he emerges as a true number 2 center and scores 60 points, 65 points, that's going to be huge for the Senators and their depth. I guess you could also say, how's Josh Norris is going to do? Because
will Josh Norris stay healthy? Yeah.
Will he score 20 goals again in his career? I don't know. So give me a breakout star, Dayton.
Breakout. Let's go with Michael Amadio. I think maybe he rekindles, his love for Ottawa after being here for what, 4 games? It wasn't long. Yeah, I think he's much better. He's on the upward trajectory. He's got experience. He's got great line mates. I think that could work really, really well.
All right. Paul, who's your breakout star of the year?
I'm going to throw out either Ridley Gregg or Shane Pinto. Those are two gritty players. Pinto, I think, he scored what did he score last year? 29 goals, 27 points, 41 games. So, we'll see if he breaks 50, 60. That would be, and you got to watch Gregg. I like him. A lot of potential there.
Yeah, I agree on both of those. You could say Sanderson already did break out, but he's another candidate to really step up his offensive game and continue to play his excellent defensive game. Who needs to bounce back from last season, Paul?
Stützle, my goodness. There's no, in my mind, hands down, he's got to bounce back. I don't know where he went last year. I read some stuff about him battling an injury all season, but he did not look like himself.
All right, Dayton.
I mean, I'd like to pick Stützle as well. The 20-point drop is concerning. I don't think it's a trend, but again, it only takes 2 seasons to become a trend. I'll add another name in there though. Josh Norris. He needs to be healthy. And I think if he's healthy, he'll bounce back. But if he's not, then it could be another challenging season.
And I think the biggest thing with Stützle isn't even just the point drop; it's the 21 goal drop. That's where it gets me. And he was battling with a wrist and shoulder injury for the whole year. I think he said it was in game 4 that he got it, and it just nagged him all year. But you can only do so much. The biggest X factor of the year. So I wrote a piece on this, so I already have my answer. Dayton, who's yours?
Josh Norris. I think if he's healthy, the team is playoff contenders. If he is injured and misses most of the season again, you have to wonder if they can make it and if they, put together a competent squad, because I think their depth isn't as great as they'd like it to be.
Paul, who's your X factor?
You know what? I'm going to throw out David Perron. And the question for me, what I'll be looking for is, can he transplant his DNA into the team? He's not going to be a superstar or anything, but I want to see how the youngsters respond to him. He'll be there with Giroux and some other veterans, and what can he do?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Dayton, I take it you read my piece because you just pretty much read it verbatim.
I may have perused it. Yes,
I said the exact same thing. It's got to be Josh Norris.
Yeah.
He creates so much more depth in the lineup. He obviously, if he can score 35 goals again, that's huge. I don't expect that. I would expect closer to 27 or so on a healthy, good year from him. But like I mentioned on our last show, he has good two-way game. That's a forgotten thing about him. So I think that he's without a doubt the X factor for the Ottawa Senators.
But there's a storyline there. What happens if he doesn't bounce back? What do you do with him? I mean, $8 million a year, and if he doesn't bounce back, you're going to be eating salary. No one's going to pay for that. So
no, I think you're eating it. I think you buy him out.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. But if he ends the season injured, you can't buy out an injured player. So
the Leafs tried that with another former Senator, and it didn't go super well.
Yeah. All right. Pick one rookie or prospect who could surprise and make the team out of training camp, or challenge for a spot. Who's your prospect or young guy that you're really looking at, Paul?
Thinking with my heart here, but Angus Crookshank, love the guy, so I'm pulling for him.
Imagine a fourth line on Ottawa with Nick Cousins, Zach Ostapchuk, and Angus Crookshank. That would suck to play against.
My goodness, yeah, no kidding.
Same answer for you, Dayton, or are you looking at someone else?
I'm looking at someone else. I think Stephen Halliday shows up. He's been just so good everywhere he's played. I wouldn't well, I'd maybe be a little surprised that he makes the team out of camp, but I could see it happening.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. One for me is going to be Maxence Gwinnett. We talked about the right-handed defense quite a bit, and the decision between now, I guess it's Kalen Addison, Travis Hamonic, and Jacob Bernard Docker. Throw Maxence Gwinnett in there as well. He's pretty close. So who's going to lead the team in scoring for the forwards? Who's your pick? I mean, Tim Stützle's the obvious answer. Are you going to go with that, Paul? Are you going to pick someone else?
I'm going with Stützle. I've got faith in the young lad. He's he'll be there. Maybe break 100.
Maybe. It honestly wouldn't surprise many people. Dayton, same with you?
It is, yeah, not to be boring, but I think he will be the next Senator to crack 100 points.
I think it's, like I said, it's a pretty obvious answer. There's not really much to dispute it. Yeah, Brady Tkachuk could do it, and I would love to see him do it because that means he has a really good year. But yeah, I think either one of those two for sure, but I would pick Stützle as well.
I could see Tkachuk breaking 50 goals before 100 points.
Yeah, I agree. That's weird to think about, but yes, I completely agree. What about the defense? Who's going to lead it in defense? Is it going to be Chabot? Is it going to be Sanderson? Dayton, you've been really liking Kalen Addison. Is it going to be him?
Oh, 100%. He's he needs a contract first. No, he's never scored more than 29 points. It's not happening. I think Chabot with Jensen will rekindle some of what he lost in the Smith years. So I think he will lead the team.
All right, Paul, is it going to be Chabot or Sanderson?
I really had a hard time. I went back and forth between the two. I settled on Sanderson, based on the data, what I've seen from him previously. But yeah, you have to wonder about Chabot. This may be his year where he could step up and be the player, be the defenseman, the offensive defenseman that people thought he was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a career high in his sophomore year, 55 points. Jake Sanderson in his sophomore year scored 38.
Yeah.
I think that Sanderson can take it this year. I think Sanderson can hit the 55 point mark. There's a good chance he takes over the first power play from Chabot, or they both run on the power play. But you have so many good forwards, you can't really do that. I think Sanderson is going to take over as the number one defenseman this year, and really thrive in it and hit 55 points. All right. Last one on the list here. Give me a bold prediction or a hot take or whatever you want to call it for this upcoming season, Paul.
Don't hate me for it, but they're not going to make the playoffs. I wrote
It's not a hot take.
Come on.
That's Vegas's odds-on favorite.
If I listen to all the hype in town, it's they're playoff cup, a cup run, but they're improved, but not enough. So
you don't think that Claude Giroux's going to ride the Stanley Cup down Rideau Canal this year?
Well, I don't know, man. It'd be fun to see. Well, where would they send her? I guess you could hop on a boat or a barge or something like they do in Tampa Bay at that time of year and float down the Rideau Canal. I
don't know.
I think 100 years ago they may have lost the Stanley Cup in that very canal. So.
I do believe so. Yeah. Dayton, what's your hot take of the year?
Man, I'm trying to think here.
You gotta make it flaming hot to make up for Paul's.
Okay, yeah. Well, I can come up with a flaming hot take. Let's see here. Give me a second.
Drum roll, and
okay. Artem Zub sets a career high of 50 points. I think he breaks out and shows a massive two-way game. He clicks incredibly with Sanderson. I think he's not in a contract year, but yeah, I think he's been building to just being really comfortable in Ottawa and in North America, and it will be his season. There's
50 points is pretty flaming hot, but that's what I asked for. So
that's what you wanted.
I think 40 points, like that's very realistic for him. Like he does have some good offensive instincts. So yeah, I don't actually hate it.
Shabbat hit 60, but Zub has 50. How's that?
But wasn't Zub number 2 in points among the defense corps? Or have I got that wrong?
No, he only had 25 last year.
Okay.
So he was probably third behind Shabbat and Sanderson.
Pick him in your hockey pools.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
And don't come at me if you don't get it.
My hot take is that Josh Norris does bounce back and hits 40 goals this year. He's already healthy. He's already so much further ahead than he was the last couple off seasons. We all know that he has it in him. I mean, as a 21-year-old, he scored 35 goals in like, what was it, 62 games, 69 games, something like that. So he was on pace to do really, really well. And so I think that he has the opportunity to bounce back. And obviously we talked about him as the X factor, but if he can come in and score 40 goals, I think the Senators are set. So
I got a bonus hot take for you then.
There you go.
Hopefully this, the Zub one's a little bit out there, I admit. But one I have been thinking of, honestly, is Shane Pinto definitely emerges as a second line center. Not a hot take. It prompts the Senators to trade Josh Norris, and he will be traded.
There's a good one, because that's quite realistic as well.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the trading him part isn't, because it's not going to be easy to do.
Well, I think they have to eat some cap or some of that salary to do it. Yeah. Because it is, it's an $8 million contract. But I think this very well could be Norris's last season in Ottawa. Even if he does break out, that would help boost his trade value. I don't know if I'd put money on it, but I could definitely see it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, hot take. Hot take. Sparta Cat will win the award for the most badass mascot in the entire league. You heard?
That is a hot take.
That's a very hot take. That might be even hotter than the 50 points for Zub. All right, but that's going to wrap things up for this episode of the Senators Roundtable, or the Hockey Writers Roundtable, depending on what angle you want to put this. But yeah, make sure to check out all the other season previews on the YouTube channel for the Hockey Writers. There's going to be one for every team. So thanks for checking this one out, and we'll see you next time.